Hello everyone, Chef Natalie here, and today we're talking about quick breads. If you will be attending one of our labs, this is what I really want you to know about quick breads. Hopefully you've read up on it, you've done some studying, maybe you've even done some Google research on your own. But quick breads are called quick breads because they're quicker to make than yeast breads. Those yeast, they require time to develop and grow and to produce the gases that make bread rise. But we're using chemical leaveners. Those leaveners are usually baking soda or baking powder, sometimes baker's ammonia. And they work their magic a lot faster. Thus, quick breads. There are 3 methods for producing quick breads: Biscuit Method, Creaming Method, and Muffin Method. Biscuit Method requires a cold, solid fat, usually nice cold butter. Creaming Method requires a soft room temperature butter that's malleable so we can cream it in our mixer. Muffin Method uses a liquid fat. That might be melted butter or maybe even vegetable oil in its liquid form. Let's start with the easy one, the Muffin Method. Because our butter or our fats are already in liquid form, it comes together really fast in the mixing bowl. The number one problem with Muffin Method is that sometimes we overmix it. Instead, I want you to sift your dry ingredients, add your wet ingredients, and stir just until combined, and then put that spoon down or whatever you're using to stir it with. We really don't want to develop gluten in our muffins, or we'll end up with little tough cakes. So stir, stir, stir just until it comes together, and then stop. You're ready to scoop it into your muffin tins and bake it off. Let's start with the creaming method. So the creaming method, I'm going to place this nice soft butter into my mixer bowl with a paddle attachment. That's right, paddle attachment. We don't want to whip it, we want to cream it. And then I'm going to add my granulated sugar and beat it or cream it until it's nice and smooth and fluffy. That butter is nice and soft. It's perfect for creaming. Next up, I'm going to add my granulated sugar. Lower the mixer with its paddle attachment, and on low speed, combine granulated sugar or sugars, whichever sugars you're using, with that butter. Then increase the speed to begin whipping. Increase that speed to begin creaming. Continue mixing until it becomes a nice, fluffy, even consistency. Now at some point you're probably going to have to scrape down that bowl. So turn the mixer off, lift it back up, and using your spatula, scrape down the bowl all the way down to the bottom. Lower the attachment back into the bowl and let it continue creaming. Now that it's nice, light, and fluffy, I can turn down my speed, and if I'm adding eggs, I would add eggs one at a time. Turn up that speed, let it emulsify. Turn that speed back down, add the next egg, and continue this process until each egg is fully combined. One more time, we're going to scrape down the bowl. Because we do have a lot of solid butter mix hanging out on the outside of that bowl. So we need to combine it back into the eggs before we start adding any dry ingredients. Nice, light, and fluffy. For Biscuit Method, our butter needs to be cold. Very, very, very cold. In fact, you might have to cut your butter, chill your butter, and then cut your butter some more. We need the pieces to be fairly small and uniform. So we could do that, certainly we could do that with a grater as shown in your books, but that would take a long time, especially if you have been asked to cut 36 pounds of butter, which is 36 of these. Can you imagine? You would be in the kitchen all day long for probably 3 days just chopping butter, running it through the grater. Instead, let's be a little bit more production friendly. So we have two options. We can use a knife and a cutting board and cut the butter manually, or we can use a food processor, and a food processor makes this really fast work. For this biscuit method, I am going to put a towel down for my cutting board to prevent my cutting board from moving around if you don't have any of the little silicone non-slips on your cutting board. Now our goal is to chop this up into a very fine cut of butter. So we're shooting for pea size, and you can see already my butter is starting to soften. It's starting to come to room temperature. So you might have to take this cutting board and put it into the cooler and let that butter chill back down so you can continue slicing it into tiny, tiny pieces. Now my butter is nice, cold, and solid again. I can continue to cut the flour in with my knife, or I can use a couple of bench scrapers. Begin adding your flour and cut and scrape and cut and scrape. Much easier to do with cold butter. Another method, one that's commercially acceptable in most bakeries, is to use a food processor. Yes, so we can use a food processor and break it up into tiny little pieces. Now, it doesn't work so well if it's just the butter, because it's going to try to cream it instead of chop it into little pieces. Instead, we usually take the flour and add it to that butter so that it has a little dry mixture, and then food processor it. That allows the pieces to break up into tiny little pieces. Again, we're looking for uniform pieces about a pea size, while coating it also in the flour. That's my preferred method for creating tiny uniform pieces of butter that are going to push up into a little mass for my biscuit methods. It's going to take me a while this way. Now, just to recap, for biscuit method, we need cold butter that we chop and dice into tiny little pieces, or use a food processor, little tiny pieces. Then, for the creaming method, we're going to use a mixer with paddle attachment and allow that to get creamy and fluffy with the sugars in our recipes. Then add our eggs one at a time, remembering to scrape that bowl. And then finally, we have the muffin method, which uses liquid fats, which is really easy to incorporate. Just remember not to overmix. All right, I hope that helps you guys get going. That's what you really need to know before beginning with quick breads. See you in the kitchen.